Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph, beginning with Tezvav Amud Beis at the very bottom. The Gemara had brought a machlokes when you have oimed kiporutz, when the exact same space that is open is the exact same space that is closed. Is that going to be considered to be mutter as a valid mechitza or not? It's a machlokes. Rav Papa says it's indeed a valid mechitza, whereas Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yeshua says that it's not. Says the Gemara trying to bring a proof for Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yeshua. Toshma Shayara Shechansa Bebika. If you have a group of travelers that encamp in a large field on Shabbos, Vehikifu, and they encircled this large field, which we said is the din of a Carmelis. It's Asr Midirabonan to metaltil dalar amos in this open field. So they made a makeshift type of mechitza. How did they do so? They encircled it with bigmalim, with camels, be'ukafois, with the saddles, on top of Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, be'avitin, with the pillows that go on the back of the camels, be'shilifin, with those loads that they put on, bekanim, with reeds, bekolochos, with klach of vegetables, metaltelin besoichon ubevashloi bein gamal legamal, kimol gamal. The Brisa goes on to say you can metaltel within this mechitza, so long as you don't have a space between one gamal and another gamal that is exactly the same space. Uben ukaf leukaf kimlo ukaf, or you don't have between the two saddles a space of the same size of a saddle. Uben avit leavit kimlo avit, and similarly you don't have between the two pillows the space of one pillow. Then it's valid to walk inside of that mechitza. Says the Gemara, therefore we have a clear proof lechara, like Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Huna ben Rabbi Yehoshua. Rav Huna ben Rabbi Yehoshua had said that it's a valid mechitza only if it's going to be greater closed space than the gap in between. And over here it says if you have a gap that's exactly the same space as that which is closed, it's invalid. So l'chara it's a kashan Rav Papa and a proof for Rabbi Huna ben Rabbi Yehoshua. Answers the Gemara, Hachanami kishenichnas v'yotzei. The space that we're talking as in between each gamal is nichnas v'yotzei. It's greater than the exact same size of the gamal, so that you can easily go in and take out. Toshma, the Gemara now tries to bring another proof. Nimtzeisa ato oimer. Here we're talking about in this brisa, we're talking about three different categories, these different types of mechitos. In regards to kilayim, it's prohibited to then plant and add mixture. So let's say you have a grapevine, you cannot plant another seed with those grapevines. Either you have to then distance 6 tvachim, they should not get yanika one from the next, or even if it's going to be closer, but you have to have a wall in order to then plant something on the other side of that vine. So what is then the definition of a wall of a mechitza that makes it valid to then plant on the other side where that vine is? So the Brisa states that there are three different categories as follows. It says, again, kol shehu pachos mishloisha, the first category is that if you have less than 3 tfachim between the reeds that are making the mechitza, tzorish lo yeh bein zeh lezeh shloisha, kedei shlo yizdaker hagedi bebas harosh. It has to be that it's less than 3 tfachim space in between, so that a gedi, a young goat, does not jump into it in one lunge. In other words, that which we're saying over here requires lavud. So even if you have, let's say, a stick or a pole that is very narrow, in between the sticks has to be less than 3 tfachim, so we can say lavud. If it's going to be 3 tfachim or more, then a gedi can go through it. It's going to make the mechitza invalid. So therefore, the first category requires that it be less than 3 tfachim for these types of reeds that are going to be themselves less than 3 tfachim. The second category, kol shehu gimel, all that which is 3 tfachim in terms of its enclosure, umigima ad dalid, or it's above 3 tfachim, that is up to 4 tfachim, but not 4 tfachim, then sarich shelo yohei bein ze leze kemuloyoy kadesh lo yeh paruz keomed. Then it cannot have the same space as that which is closed, so it should not be paruz keomed. And thereby it would be invalid if it would be paruz keomed. The Brisa goes on to say, "V'im haya paruz b'muba ala omed af keneged omed aser." So here the Brisa says if it's more paruz, more gap than closed, then it's going to invalidate planting even in front of where it is omed. In other words, even where it's omed, it doesn't have chashivus because not yet 4 tfachim. So therefore, it's not a valid wall. So therefore, if it's going to be a space that is greater than the closure, then it's porous, that is meruba me omed. Now, there's a lashon over here that needs to be explained because this second category states that if it has the same space as that which is closed, that it's going to be omed keparus. Then the Brisa goes on to say, if it's parus meruba me omed, then you cannot use it even by planting even opposite the omed. So what is the switch over here? The Gemara will have to explain. The third category, kol shehu dalid, all that which is dalid tfachim, ume arbo ad eser amos, or is dalid tfachim until all the way of eser amos, including eser amos, then sorry shlo yeh ben ze leze kemloyoy shlo yikparz keomid. It can't have the same space as that which is closed, because then it's going to be parz keomid. V'im haya parz keomid, and if it's going to be parz keomid, then keneged haomed mutter keneged haparz osur. Then opposite that which is closed, since it's at least 4 tfachim, then it's going to be a valid, significant wall. You can plant across opposite that wall. However, if it's going to be, however, more than the space is going to be more than the wall, then you cannot go ahead and plant opposite that which is the space, the gap. V'im haya, the Brisa continues, after the third category explains 3 different halachos. V'im haya oimed meruba ala parutz. If you have a situation where the oimed is meruba ala parutz, that means the closed places is greater than the gap. Af keneged haparutz mutter. Then you could even plant opposite the parutz, because then you have a valid wall, and the parutz is considered to be a mere entranceway. It's not going to be a pirza of that wall. Nifritza b'yoser me'eser aser. However, if it has a gap that is going to be greater than eser amos, then it's a pirza, it invalidates the wall altogether. If you have reeds that are stuck into the ground, with on top of it, across, is a type of vine that is braided, in other words, you're making a tzuras haPesach, then even if it's greater than eser amos, then it validates it to be a wall. Afilu b'yosim eser mutter, it's mutter to then plant opposite that wall. So now we explained different categories in regards to, and different halachas in regards to a mechitza. Says the Gemara, Kitani mihas. Reisha, it states in the Reisha. Now, this is the second category that we quoted above. Megimel va'ad dalid, ubevad shelo yeh bein ze leze b'miloya. It says in the second category, what we're calling the Reisha, if you have between 3 and up to 4 tfachim, not including 4 tfachim, then, so long as it's not going to be a space that is going to be in between the same size. So here we see that if it's the same size space, that's omed, that is kiparutz, it's invalid to be a mechitza. So the Gemara says, Tiyufta de Rav Papa. This is going to be a refutation of Rav Papa, who says that if it's omed kiparutz, it's valid as a mechitza. Answers the Gemara, Amar lach Rav Papa, my mila'oi. What does it mean when it says mila'oi, that there's a space in between, a gap in between that which is oimed? Nichnas v'yoytze is a greater gap than that which is oimed. And therefore, since it's greater, it's pirza that's greater than oimed, then it's not going to be valid. So even according to Papa, of course, it's not valid. Hochenami mistabra. It's also mistabra to say like this, that it refers to yoytze v'nichnas, a little bit greater space than that which is oimed. Midiktani, from the fact that it teaches imhaya parutz meruba al ha'oimed af keneged ha'oimed osir, because it goes on to say that if it's going to be the parutz is meruba al ha'oimed, then it's going to be osir to plant even opposite that which is oimed. Diuk ha ke oimed mutter. If it's going to be the same size gap as that which is oimed, then it's mutter. Like Rav Papa is saying, so Shema Mina, therefore it's not a refutation of Rav Papa. In fact, the Brisa seems to even support Rav Papa. To which the board now asks, since indeed the Brisa seems to imply like Rav Papa that Oimed Kiparutz is a Mechitza, we now have a question, a tiyufta, a refutation on the opinion of Rav Huna b'Rav Yoshua. Answers the Gemara Amaloch. Rav Huna b'Rav Yoshua would say to you, "L'taimeich emo seifa." According to you, let us look at the seifa of this brisa. It states over there, "Im haya oimed meruba al haparutz, af keneged haparutz mutter." If it's oimed as meruva al haparutz, you can plant even opposite the gap. And it states hakeparutz diuk. If it's the same, then it's also. So you see, just like me in the seifa. So we have now over here a contradiction, because in the Reisha it implies like Rav Papa, whereas the Seifa implies like Rav Huna b'Rav Yoshua. So he asked the Gemara, Seifa kusha kasha l'Rav Papa, Reisha kasha l'Rav Huna b'Rav Yoshua. Explains the Gemara, Seifa l'Rav Papa lo kasha. The Seifa Rav Papa is not a kasha. Why? Because Aidi the Tana Reisha parutz merubala oimed. Since in the Reisha teaches that parutz is meruba ala oimed, then it wants to be consistent in the Seifa. Tana Seifa oimed meruba ala parutz. So it's not a kasha on Rav Papa. In other words, Rav Papa would say, make a diuk from the Reisha, and don't make a diuk from the Seifa. The Seifa is only agav the Reisha. Reisha l'Rav Huna b'Rav Yoshua l'kasha. Similarly, the Reisha is not going to be a kasha on Rav Huna, the Rav Yoshua. Because I did the boilim misni seifa oime meruba ala porutz, since it had to teach in the seifa that oime meruba ala porutz, that's going to be valid even opposite the porutz, whereby you make a diuk. If it's going to be the exact same size of the gap to which is oimed, then it's going to be pasul. So then he says in this reisha we also have to then teach to be parallel. Tana reisha pors meruba ala oimed, but not to make the diuk. So each one is not a kasha from the Reisha and the Seifa. So Gemara now asks, Bishlama l'Rav Papa, Mishum hachi loy ariv lehu v'tani lehu. If you look at the first two halachos, the first two categories that the Brisa taught, the first category said that if it's going to be, let's say, poles, or little, let's say, sticks, we said, that are going to be very narrow, then you cannot have in between these sticks a space that is going to be 3 tfachim or greater. Otherwise, it's going to be invalid as a mechitza. You cannot plant opposite that wall. The second category, however, stated that if it's going to be 3 up to 4, but not including 4 tfachim, that it states that if you have a space of 3 tfachim, let's say it's 3 tfachim, you have a space in between that is 3 tfachim, it's also going to be invalid. So ask the Gemara, according to that, since Rav Papa holds that if it's going to be the same space as it is that which is oimed, that means oimed is kiparutz. So therefore the second category is going to be mutter. It's going to be a valid mechitza with 3 tfachim, with a space of 3 tfachim, it's valid. Whereas in the Reisha, it's invalid. So we understand why he didn't mix and match the two together, and by teaching them together. So again, because of this, since it's a different halacha, a different din, we don't intermingle, we don't mix the two first categories and teach by saying that, by putting them together, because according to Rav Papa, the first category, it would be invalid, and the second category, it would be valid. But according to Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua, the halach is the same. So we should then combine the two categories. The first category, if it's going to be 3 tvachim, it's an invalid mechitza. And the second category is going to be 3 tvachim, is going to be invalid mechitza. Because in the first category, we said if it's less than 3 tvachim, the poles, and you have a space of 3 tvachim, it's invalid. Because it's invalid. The poros is muba ala because it's not a lavud. And the second category, we said that if you have 3 tvachim that is closed, but then you have 3 tvachim that is open, according to Rav Yehuna, B'Rav Yeshua, it's also possible. It's also not a good mechitza. So why don't we then teach the two categories together, whereby it implies that this brisa is like Rav Papa, that indeed a space that is poros ke'oimed is indeed a mechitza. Says the Gemara, it's not a kasha. But let's speak out the kasha one more time. El Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua le'Rabinu v'Lisnu Kol shehu pachos mishloisha. The first category says less than 3. This shloisha, and the second category, that's shloisha. Sorry shelo yeh bein zeh lezeh shloisha. You should not have in either case 3 tvachim. That is a gap, because in both cases it will invalidate the wall. Answers the Gemara, it's not a kasha and a proof for, it's not a kasha on Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua, and would not be a proof that the brisa is like Rav Papa, because mishum delo dami psula dereish lepsula deseifa. The reason for the psul in the reish is a different reason for the psul in the seifa. It's true in din, they are the same. That in both cases, when you have 3 tfachim of a gap, it will invalidate the mechitza, but for different reasons altogether. Psula dereish kadesh lo yud Yizdakir Hagedi bebas achas. The first category states that if you have a 3 tfachim space, then you won't have lavud, whereby a gedi can then enter, and that will invalidate the mechitza. But the psula desef is a whole different reason. Shelo yehe porutz ke'oimed. There, the reason is because if 3 tfachim that is a gap, then you're going to have the reason as porotz ke'oimed. Nafi Rav Huna B'Rav Yeshua, that's invalid. So therefore it's a total different reason. It's true, both of them, the same is true in terms of the din. They're both not going to be a proper mechitza. But the reasons are different, therefore you have to put them at 2 separate categories.